National Guard veteran John Byrnes. He is the Education Director for Concerned Veterans for America. I'll start with John Jordan first. John, we've been talking about how this might unfold. Someone put it well, I think, saying this is not a one-act play. Where do you think we go from here? How are things going now, and where do you think we go?
Well, I, for one, am not sold on the inevitability of a Russian encirclement of Kiev. The Russians are relying almost exclusively on standoff systems, whether it's cruise missiles or surface-to-surface ballistic missiles, and there's a finite number in those inventory. Now, the Russians are using those because they can inflict casualties and pain and hopefully, in their eyes, drive Zelensky to the negotiating table without risking politically dangerous for the Russians, Russian casualties, or exposing some of these units that don't seem to be following orders particularly well to combat situations. So, yeah, I'm not as sold on the inevitability of the Russian army here as many other analysts are.
Interesting. John Byrnes, your take on what's going on right now, because a lot of people certainly rooting for Ukraine, but they haven't gotten the MiGs. There is not going to be a no-fly zone enforced by the West. Your thoughts on how Ukraine can do here?
You know, it's a tragedy what's going on in Ukraine. We at Concerned Veterans for America feel very deep sympathy for the Ukrainian people. We're really happy to hear. It's not often I agree with John Kirby, but when he's trying to keep us from escalating a war against, the country with the largest nuclear arsenal on the planet, I do agree with him. We're really happy to hear that we're not going to have a no-fly zone enforced by the U.S. or NATO. My heart's with the Ukrainian people. Their valiant defense is awesome, but what would be worse than a war in Ukraine is a broader, wider war throughout Europe with NATO and Russia. Again, the biggest, nuclear arsenal on the planet.
John Jordan, we see a lot about the southern part of the country. We keep waiting for Odessa to come under attack. It has, and it likely will again. Why is that important to the Russians? Because that is going to be an area that the Ukrainians are going to have some challenges.
Well, the Russians are trying to secure the Black Sea and lump some of these cities for political leverage for the negotiations for the after the war. This is the race for negotiating clout now, because the Russians know they're not going to occupy all of Ukraine. So everybody's trying to strengthen their position. And in the south, the terrain is more favorable for the Russians than it is in the north, as is there's fewer Ukrainian forces dispersed there. But just because the Russians pass through a town does not necessarily mean they control it. And this is an error made on some other networks where they color in these big areas as Russian occupied. And that really isn't true. The Russians may have passed through there, but to sustain these offensives, they have to bring largely unprotected supply convoys, which are, can easily be attacked by teams of 5 to 15 soldiers and disrupted. So just because you've gone through an area doesn't mean you actively control it. To actively control an area that even a lot of other networks and their graphics say they do, they would need 4 to 5 times the number of troops that they actually have, not to mention troops that are actually motivated. So I think a lot of this is being misstated in the media.
John Byrnes, your thoughts on talking with China, how they're playing this right now, whether they're on Russia's side, whether we can get them more on our side to try to get Putin to stand down.
Well, China, as we all know, is entirely on China's side. And the best thing that we can do is to continue to use diplomacy to try and show China how this war is just a tragedy. It's a terrible, terrible incident for the global commons right now. There's going to be no good come of this war. Western Europe, the United States, the global market economy has kind of turned on Vladimir Putin. I think, I hope President Xi Jinping has enough common sense to realize that, he needs the global common market more than he needs Vladimir Putin as an ally.
All right, John and John, thank you so much. John Jordan, John Byrnes, thank you so much, gentlemen. We have much more ahead on our